Hi, I'm Gordon Ryan and welcome to this How Do I video on Exchange 2010. In this video I'm going to show you how to configure an Exchange 2010 server and to create a certificate request to actually use to secure traffic to the server. For this demonstration I have a single Exchange 2010 server that's installed on Windows Server 2008. So let's get started. I've already loaded the Exchange Management Console. Now everything that I'm doing here could be done from the Exchange Management shell, but the advantage of Exchange 2010 from a certificate perspective is there is a new wizard which can be used to create certificate requests, and this simplifies the process from Exchange 2007. So if you're used to doing it with Exchange 2007, you can use the same techniques, but for Exchange 2010 we now have a wizard. For this demonstration, then what I need to do is to go down into my server configuration. And at this point, the only configuration that I've done is to enter the product key for my Exchange server. So here is my Exchange 2010 server. And you'll see it says that there's no certificates for it. So I can go down and you'll see in here, I've got the mailbox server, just that single box. It's got all three roles actually installed on it, the Hub Transport, Client Access, and Mailbox. If I go into Client Access, you'll see at the moment that I don't actually have Outlook Anywhere enabled, and I have a couple of wizards here, so I can go in here and I can configure the external client access rules for it. I could go and enable Outlook Anywhere, but before I do any of that, what I really want to do is actually get my certificate configured. So to do that, I'm going to click on Server Configuration, and if I bring out this window on the side slightly, you'll see I now have this new Exchange certificate wizard. So when I start this up, it's actually going to ask me a series of questions so I can then configure my certificate request to use with Exchange. The first thing I need to do is actually give it a name. This name is important because it's what I'll actually see it in the interface, so it's a good idea to give this something which is meaningful. So I've given it a name. The next question I have is whether or not I want to use a wildcard certificate. And one of the recommended practices with Exchange 2010 is to use wildcard certificates because it simplifies the process of actually requesting a certificate. If I was to use a wildcard certificate, then all I'm going to do here is do something like star.contoso.com. At this point in time, I could then hit next. I would then generate my request and send that off, and then I could then just use that certificate. The downside to using wildcard certificates is that typically they're going to cost you more money, and a lot of organizations actually have security policies which forbid their use. The other issue you may have is that if you have Windows Mobile 5 devices, they don't support the use of wildcard certificates, so that may actually stop you. If you have Windows Mobile 6 or later devices, then they're okay with the wildcard certificates. For this demonstration though, I'm actually going to go through and I'm going to configure my certificate names and use the subject or alternate name functionality. So I'll click next, and then you'll see I have a number of different options that I can come in here and configure. And the first one you'll see is federated sharing. And if you enable federated sharing, this is going to require a public certificate. And there is a list up on the Microsoft website of the certificate authorities which are actually trusted for using federated sharing, because this actually has to be used with a Microsoft Federation Gateway. The advantage of federation sharing is that once you have set it up, any other organization which has set up federated sharing as well will actually be able to share calendaring and free busy information with users in your organization once you have enabled it for their domain. In this demonstration, I'm actually going to be using an internal certificate authority to process my certificate request and to give me a certificate instead of using an external one. And that, of course, is not going to be supported if I wanted to do federated sharing. So for this demonstration, I'm actually going to leave that one unchecked. So the next option then is to configure my client Outlook settings. As I'm going to allow Outlook Web App on the internet, and I'm going to use a certificate name of e2010.contoso.com. So that's my internal name, and that's what internal clients are going to be able to resolve. I'm then also going to say I'm going to use Outlook Web App on the internet, and for this one I'm actually going to have a different name, and so the name that I'm going to use is mail.contoso.com. I can then do the same thing for my Active Sync, and then for my Exchange web services as well. And you can see in here I'm using auto discover, and you have the different options for doing auto discover. So I can either use auto discover. If I was using this short URL, so contoso.com, then I'll need to make sure that on my edge device that was actually publishing this, I would have contoso.com/autodiscover/autodiscover.xml, which is going to point to the autodiscover virtual directory on my client access server. Alternatively, I could be using a SRV record and typing in there. For this one though, I'm just going to use the long URL. Next one down I have is my ability to secure my POP and my IMAP traffic. So I'll put in the names that I'm going to use here. So it's just that mail contoso.com. If I was running unified messaging in my environment, then I could use the unified messaging and generate certificates for securing those. The next one down I have is my hub transport server. By default, when you install Exchange, you're actually going to get a self-signed certificate, and the self-signed certificate can be used for doing mutual TLS to secure all of your internal mail, and that's a default configuration. If you want to start securing external mail, then what we can also do at this point in time is then put in the fully qualified domain name, and this will just be another name that's going to be added onto our certificates. The last one we have is this legacy domains, and the legacy domains is used for any legacy Exchange server. So just say I had 2007 in this environment, or I had 2003, I could then use that as part of this single request. Once I'm happy with the names that I've put in here, if I click next, it's then actually going to say these are the subject alternate names which you're going to use. And you can see here I have the ability to specify what my common name is going to be. And here I'm going to say I actually want my common name to be mail.contoso.com. So this is going to be the primary record on my SSL certificate. So I'm just going to stick with those names. So I could add in additional names if I wanted to as part of this process. Once I'm happy with that, I then need to put in the information for the organization, and then I need to specify the name of the file. Once I'm happy with that, I can then hit new, and this is then going to go and run that PowerShell command for me. And I'll see once this is run that it's actually gone and run this command. So it's from the new Exchange certificate, specified a friendly name for it, then the generate request, private key is exportable, and you'll see that's pretty much the same process that would have happened with my Exchange 2007. So I can click finish on that, and there's some additional instructions. I'm going to walk through these once we're done. Now that my certificate request has been made, the next step is to actually go in and submit this request to my certification authority. And if I was doing this in a real world, I'd actually be submitting this request to a public certificate authority. For this demonstration though, I'm just going to use an internal CA. To get to my CA, I'm just going to go to the website for it. And you'll see here, I'm just using the Active Directory Certificate Services. So I'm going to request a certificate, do a advanced request and submit the request. I'm going to copy in the information that I got from the certificate request here. I'm going to choose the web server certificate, and then I'll click submit. Now, because of the environment I'm here, this actually gets approved straight away. And the next thing I then need to do is to actually download the certificate. And I'm going to download the certificate as a CER file. So I'll save that request. I'll put it into that folder. And this will be my mail.contoso.com .cer file this time. So I'll choose save, choose close, and then I can close this browser. Returning to the Exchange Management Console, you can see that for my certificates, I have two certificates that are actually available. I have the Contoso External Mail, which is one I just created, and I've got this Microsoft Exchange, and that one is self-signed. And you'll notice at the moment that the Contoso External Mail is also self-signed. And this is not ideal, because it means then that the only people who are going to trust this are people who have actually specifically been given this and installed it. So here you'll see on the right hand side I have a new request wizard, which is this complete pending request. And this will complete the process. So the first step I did there was I generated the certificate request, I generated the certificate, and it's existing as a self-signed certificate. I then went and submitted that certificate to my CA. My CA has signed it, and then this is where I use that CER file. So I'm going to choose Browse. Here is my mail.contoso.com file. It's in that certificates folder that I created before. So I'm going to choose Open, and I'll click Complete. That's then actually going to import it, and you'll see this is successfully completed. The actual command that it ran was import exchange certificate server 2010, and then it was actually go and read that file. So I'm going to click finish on that, and you'll see that my certificate now has gone from being self-signed, being true, to self-signed being false. If I bring up the properties for it, I can then see my certification path goes up to my CA. I can see that I actually have the certificate and I have the private key. And the private key is really important, because if I don't have that, then I won't be able to use the certificate for exchange. The next process then is to actually assign this certificate to the different services that are going to use it. At the moment, you'll see I've got the second Microsoft Exchange certificate. It's associated with IMAP, POP, IIS, and SMTP, and nothing is associated with my new certificate. To associate this certificate, therefore, with the new ones, I then need to run this other new wizard we have, which is this assign services to certificate. So I've selected my certificate, bring up the new assign services to certificate wizard. I'm going to add in the service. At the moment, it's just doing a search of Active Directory to identify all of the Exchange 2010 servers. Once that's completed, I can then click Next. If there was other servers, and I can come in here and add them in. I'm then going to choose which services I'm going to use this with. So I'm going to use this with IMAP, with POP. I'm going to choose SMTP and IIS. Now, if I had unified messaging in here, I could add that in too. Once I'm happy with that, I'll click Assign, and then that is actually going to use the enable certificate commandlet. And so here it's just confirming that I want to use this particular certificate, and I could go back and I could actually check that thumbprint against the certificate. I'm happy with that. And you'll see here, this is the command that it ran. So it ran the enable exchange certificate, specified the server, and then it chose the services we're going to apply it to. I'll click Finish, and you'll now see that it's associated with the IMAP, POP, IIS services, and the original self-signed certificate is now just being used for SMTP, so for mutual TLS within the environment. Now that I have that certificate assigned, I could then go into my client access environment, and I could then start doing things like configuring the external access domains, and I could also go and enable Outlook Anywhere. But that's going to complete this video for the time being. Thank you for joining me. For more information on Exchange 2010, be sure to go and check out the Exchange Tech Center on TechNet, and also look for further videos within the How Do I series.